twisted metal of the derelict ship groaned under the harsh winds of planet Korath as Marcus Kane stepped through the breach in its hull. His weathered face, marked by years of dangerous salvage work, scanned the darkened interior with practiced eyes. The 30-year-old human had seen enough wrecked vessels to know. When one held secrets worth investigating, his scanner beeped softly, indicating life signs somewhere deep within the wreckage. Marcus frowned, adjusting the plasma rifle slung. Across his broad shoulders, most scavengers would have turned around at this point. Curiosity had always been both his greatest asset and his most dangerous flaw. The corridor ahead was littered with debris from what appeared to be a recent crash. Emergency lighting cast eerie shadows on the walls as Marcus moved forward, his heavy boots echoing in the silence. The life signs were getting stronger, leading him toward what looked like a medical bay. As he rounded the corner, Marcus froze. Huddled behind an overturned medical bed was a figure unlike anything he had ever seen. The being was clearly female, appearing no older than 19 in human years, with pale blue skin that seemed to shimmer with an inner light. Her long silver hair was matted with dried blood, and her delicate features were twisted in pain. She wore the tattered remains of what might have been ceremonial robes, now stained and torn. When she looked up at him with eyes the color of deep amethyst, Marcus felt something shift in his chest. There was intelligence there, and fear, but also a desperate hope that made his protective instincts flare to life. The alien girl tried to scramble backward, pressing herself against the wall. She spoke in a language he didn't recognize her, voice musical despite the terror in it. Marcus slowly raised his hands, showing he meant no harm. "Easy there," he said softly. "I'm not going to hurt you." She continued speaking in her native tongue, pointing at a wound on her side that was bleeding a strange luminescent fluid. Marcus's military training kicked in as he assessed her injuries. She was hurt badly and needed medical attention soon. Against his better judgment, Marcus knelt down and opened his emergency medical kit. The girl watched him warily as he pulled out basic supplies. When he gestured toward her wound, she hesitated before nodding slightly. As Marcus began cleaning the injury, he noticed something extraordinary. Where his fingers touched her skin, a faint glow seemed to pass between them. The girl gasped, her eyes widening in surprise. The wound began healing at a rate that defied explanation, the torn flesh knitting itself back together. "What are you?" Marcus whispered in amazement. The girl seemed to understand his tone, if not his words. She placed her hand over his, and suddenly, images flooded his mind. He saw a beautiful world of crystal cities and floating gardens. He witnessed its destruction by dark ships bearing the crimson symbol of the Syndicate. He felt her pain as she watched her people die, and her desperate escape in the medical ship that had ultimately crashed here. When the vision ended, Marcus found himself staring into her eyes with new understanding. She was alone, just as he was, a survivor in a galaxy that had shown them both too much cruelty. "Zara," she said softly, touching her chest. Then she pointed at him questioningly. "Marcus," he replied. "Marcus Kane." She repeated his name with careful pronunciation, and he found himself smiling for the first time in months. There was something about this mysterious alien girl that called to him, wakening feelings he had long buried, as if reading his thoughts. Zara reached out and touched his face gently. Another wave of warmth passed between them, and Marcus realized that whatever was happening here was going to change both their lives forever. The interior of Marcus's ship, the Wanderer, had never felt so alive. 3 days had passed since he brought Zara aboard. Her presence had transformed the cold metal corridors into something that almost felt like home. She moved with a grace that seemed to defy gravity, her bare feet making no sound on the deck plates as she explored her new surroundings. Marcus watched her from the doorway of the main cabin, noting how she paused to examine each piece of equipment with curiosity rather than fear. Her injuries had healed completely, leaving no trace of the trauma she had endured. More than that, her touch seemed to be healing parts of his ship he hadn't even realized were damaged. "The environmental systems are running at 98% efficiency," he told her, though he knew she couldn't understand his words yet. "They haven't run that well in years." Zara turned to him with that luminous smile that made his heart skip. She had been picking up basic English with remarkable speed, as if her mind was naturally attuned to learning new languages. She pointed to the humming machinery around them and said, "Better now." "Much better," Marcus confirmed, moving closer. "You did that, didn't you? You're healing my ship." She nodded, then placed her hand on a section of wall that had always given him trouble. Immediately, the persistent vibration that had plagued that bulkhead for months ceased. Zara's eyes sparkled with pleasure at his amazed expression. Over the past few days, they had developed a routine. Marcus would pilot the ship to new salvage sites, while Zara worked on repairs he couldn't afford to have done professionally. The evenings, they would sit together in the observation deck, sharing simple meals while she taught him words in her language, and he helped her with English. Tonight was different, though. As they sat watching the stars wheel by outside the viewport, Zara seemed more withdrawn than usual. Marcus had learned to read the subtle shifts in her expression, the way her ethereal beauty dimmed when she was troubled. "What's wrong?" he asked. Gently, Zara was quiet for a long moment, then began to speak in halting English, mixed with her native tongue. Through gestures and the few words they shared, she told him more about her world. She had been royalty of a sort, one of the last of her people who possessed the strongest healing abilities. The Crimson Syndicate had targeted her world specifically for those gifts. Planning to use her people as living medical tools as she spoke, tears began to flow down her cheeks, glowing softly like liquid starlight. Without thinking, Marcus reached out and brushed them away. The moment his skin touched hers, he felt her pain as if it were his own, but also her gratitude for his kindness. "You're safe now," he said firmly. "I won't let anyone hurt you again." Zara looked into his eyes, searching for something. Whatever she found, there seemed to satisfy her, because she leaned closer until their faces were only inches apart. Marcus could feel her warm breath on his skin, could see his own reflection in her amethyst eyes. "Marcus," she whispered, and the way she said his name made it sound like a prayer. He cupped her face gently in his hands, marveling at the softness of her skin. When she didn't pull away, he closed the distance between them. Their first kiss was tender and hesitant, a question asked and answered in the space of a heartbeat. Zara's healing abilities seemed to extend to emotional wounds as well. As their kiss deepened, Marcus felt years of loneliness and pain melting away. She made a soft sound of contentment against his lips, her hands fisting in his shirt as if she never wanted to let him go. When they finally broke apart, both were breathing hard. Zara rested her forehead against his, her eyes bright with unshed tears of joy this time. "Not alone anymore," she said in careful English. "Never alone again," Marcus promised, pulling her close. That night, Zara slept curled against his side. Marcus stared out at the stars and wondered what he had done to deserve this miracle. The galaxy had taken so much from both of them, but somehow it had also brought them together. He didn't know what challenges lay ahead, but for the first time in years, he wasn't facing them alone. The alarm klaxons of the Wanderer pierced the peaceful morning like a blade through silk. Marcus bolted upright from where he had been lying with Zara in his arms. Instantly alert despite the comfort he had found in her embrace, she stirred beside him, her amethyst eyes opening with concern as the ship's artificial intelligence began its urgent announcement. "Captain Kane, we have 3 vessels approaching on an intercept course. Configuration matches Crimson Syndicate hunter-killer ships. Estimated time to weapons range. For minutes." Marcus was already moving, pulling on his clothes as adrenaline flooded his system. Zara sat up, the bedsheets falling away from her luminous form as understanding dawned in her expression. She had been dreading this moment since he found her. "Found me," she whispered, her voice heavy with despair. "Ah." "Not yet they haven't," Marcus growled, helping her dress quickly. "What did you think they were tracking you?" Zara touched a small pendant at her throat that Marcus had assumed was just jewelry. Now he could see it pulsing with the same soft light as her skin. "Royal beacon," she explained. "Cannot remove. Shows I am alive." Marcus cursed under his breath as they rushed to the bridge. Through the main viewport, He could already see the distinctive red hole markings of Syndicate ships growing larger against the starfield. These weren't just any bounty hunters. They were the Syndicate's elite, equipped with military-grade weapons and shields. Options, Marcus? The ship's AI asked. Not many good ones, he admitted, sliding into the pilot's seat. His hands flew over the controls, bringing weapons online and charging the jump drive. How long for a hyperspace jump? 3 minutes? 17 seconds? The first energy blast rocked the Wanderer before Marcus could respond. The Syndicate ships had opened fire early, clearly not interested in taking them alive. Warning lights bathed the bridge in crimson as Marcus threw the ship into an evasive pattern. Zara strapped herself into the co-pilot's seat, her face pale but determined. As another barrage hammered their shields, she placed her hands on the console before her. Immediately, the shield generators began running at peak efficiency, their power output increasing beyond normal parameters. Whatever you're doing, keep it up, Marcus said through gritted teeth, pulling the ship through a tight spiral that would have torn apart most vessels. The Wanderer groaned under the stress but held together. The largest of the pursuing ships moved to cut off their escape. Root Marcus could see its weapons charging for what would likely be a killing blow. In that moment, something extraordinary happened. Zara's eyes began to glow with the same inner light as her skin, and she pressed her palms flat against the ship's console. Power surged through every system aboard the Wanderer. The engines screamed as they pushed beyond their design limits, carrying them forward in a burst of speed that caught their pursuers off guard. Marcus used the momentary advantage to slip past the lead ship, but he knew it wouldn't be enough. Jump drive ready, the AI announced. Just as Marcus reached for the jump controls, the Syndicate ships fired in unison. The combined blast should have vaporized them, but something impossible happened. The energy seemed to bend around the Wanderer, deflected by a shimmering barrier that extended from Zara's outstretched hands. How are you doing that? Marcus gasped. I do not know, Zara replied, strain evident in her voice.
Power comes when you are in danger.
The effort was clearly exhausting. But she maintained the barrier as Marcus initiated the jump to hyperspace. The stars elongated into lines of light, and suddenly they were alone in the safety of the hyperspace tunnel. Zara collapsed back in her seat. Her skin dimmed to its normal luminescence. Marcus was at her side instantly, checking her pulse and breathing. She was unconscious but stable, clearly drained by whatever she had done to save them. As he carried her back to their quarters, Marcus's mind raced. The woman he had fallen for was far more than she had revealed. Her healing abilities were just the beginning. She possessed power that could reshape energy itself. No wonder the Syndicate wanted her so badly. But they had also painted a target on both their backs that would never fade. The Syndicate didn't give up, and they would keep coming until they had what they wanted. Marcus looked down at Zara's peaceful face and made a silent vow. Let them come. He had found something worth fighting for, and he would protect it with his last breath. The hunt had begun. But Marcus Kane had never backed down from a fight in his life. This one would be different, though. This time, he wasn't fighting just for survival. He was fighting for love. 2 weeks had passed since their narrow escape from the Syndicate ships, and the Wanderer drifted in the shadow of a dead moon while Marcus worked frantically to upgrade their defenses. Small asteroid mining station they had docked with specialized in military hardware. Marcus was spending every credit he had accumulated over years of salvage work. Zara stood beside him in the equipment bay, her hand resting on his shoulder as he installed the new shield generators. Her touch had become a constant source of strength for him, and he found himself leaning into her warmth as he worked. This should give us a fighting chance, he murmured, connecting the final power coupling. The shields can withstand direct hits from Syndicate cruisers, at least for a while. Zara's expression was thoughtful as she watched him work. Over the past weeks, her English had improved dramatically, and she spoke now with only the faintest accent coloring her words. Marcus, I have been thinking about what happened during the chase. The power I used, it felt familiar, like remembering a dream. He straightened, wiping sweat from his brow. What kind of dream? She moved to the viewport, staring out at the cold stars. On my world, there were legends of the first ones. My people who could do more than heal. They could manipulate the very forces that hold the universe together. I thought they were just stories until you deflected enough. Energy to level a city, Marcus finished. Zara, whatever this power is, it's growing stronger. I can feel it when you're near. She turned to face him, her eyes reflecting depths he was only beginning to understand. It responds to my emotions. When I thought they might hurt you, something awakened inside me that had been sleeping my whole life. Marcus crossed the room. To stand before her, taking her hands in his. I need you to know something. Whatever you become, whatever power you possess, it doesn't change how I feel about you. You're still the frightened girl I found in that wreck, and you're still the woman I've fallen in love with. Tears gathered in her amethyst eyes as she looked up at him. I love you too, she whispered. But I'm scared, Marcus. What if this power changes me into something you can't love anymore? Instead of answering with words, Marcus pulled her into his arms and kissed her with all the passion and tenderness he possessed. She melted against him, her body fitting perfectly against his, as if they had been made for each other. When they broke apart, both were breathing hard. Nothing could change how I feel, he said firmly. Nothing. That night they lay together. In the captain's quarters, skin touching skin, as starlight filtered through the viewport, Zara's luminescence was brighter than usual, her entire body glowing softly in the darkness. When Marcus traced patterns on her skin with his fingertips, trails of light followed his touch, creating beautiful designs that faded slowly. I can feel your heartbeat, she murmured against his chest. Not just with my ears, but with something deeper. It's like we're connected now. Marcus held her closer, marveling at the warmth that radiated from her. I feel it too, like you've become part of me. As they made love, Zara's ability seemed to amplify their connection. Feel her emotions as clearly as his own, her pleasure and love flowing between them in waves of sensation that left them both gasping. When she cried out his name, light exploded around them, filling the room with ethereal radiance. In the aftermath, as they lay entwined and breathless, Marcus realized that something fundamental had changed between them. They were no longer just two beings who had found each other in the vastness of space. They had become something new, something more than the sum of their parts. The ship's proximity alarms chose that moment to shatter their peace. Marcus was up and moving before the second tone sounded, but Zara was faster. She stood naked in the starlight, her skin blazing with power as her senses reached out beyond the ship's hull. 6 ships, she said, her voice carrying an otherworldly resonance. The Syndicate has found us again, but this time they've brought a dreadnought. Marcus pulled on his clothes, his mind racing through their options. The mining station's defenses were minimal, and there was nowhere to run in this system. They were trapped. The civilians on the station, he said. We can't let them get caught in the crossfire. Zara nodded, her expression fierce with determination. Then we don't run this time. We end this. As she spoke, the lights throughout the ship flickered and brightened. Power flowed through every circuit, every conduit, as Zara's awakened abilities reached out to embrace their vessel. The Wanderer itself seemed to come alive, its systems operating at levels that should have been impossible. Marcus looked at the woman he loved, seeing her not as the broken refugee he had rescued, but as the powerful being she was becoming. Whatever happened next, they would face it together. The final battle was about to begin. The space around the mining station erupted into chaos as the Syndicate fleet opened fire. The massive dreadnought Crimson Death hung at the center of the formation like a metal predator, its weapons arrays charging for a devastating bombardment that would reduce the civilian station to debris. Marcus pushed the Wanderer's engines beyond their limits, racing to intercept the incoming fire before it could reach the helpless miners and their families. Beside him, Zara sat with her eyes closed, her entire body radiating power that made the air around her shimmer like heat waves. I can feel them, she said, her voice carrying harmonics that resonated through the ship's hull. The Syndicate soldiers, their hatred, their greed, but also their fear. They're terrified of what I might become. The first wave of enemy fighters streaked past them, their plasma cannons lighting up space with deadly fire. Marcus threw the Wanderer into an impossible series of maneuvers, but they were vastly outnumbered. Warning lights flashed as their shields took hit after hit. "Marcus," Zara said softly, opening her eyes to look at him. "Trust me." Before he could ask what she meant, she stood and walked to the center of the bridge. Her hands rose slowly, palms facing outward, and suddenly, every screen on the ship displayed the same image: Zara's face. Beautiful and terrible in its serene power. "I am Zara of the Ethereal." Her voice boomed across all communication frequencies, reaching every ship in the battle. "I am the last daughter of a murdered world, and I claim the right of blood vengeance against those who would enslave my people." Syndicate ships hesitated in their attack, clearly unprepared for this development. On the main screen, Marcus could see the Dreadnought's bridge crew scrambling as their captain shouted orders. "You destroyed my home, killed my family, scattered my people to the winds like ash," Zara continued, her luminescence growing brighter with each word. "But you made one mistake. You left me alive." Power erupted from her in waves that were visible even in the vacuum of space. The energy struck the nearest Syndicate fighters, and instead of destroying them, it began to heal them. Battle damage vanished from their hulls. Life support systems that had been failing were restored, and most shocking of all, the minds of their pilots were cleared of the aggression enhancers and loyalty drugs that had turned them into willing slaves. One by one, the fighters began to break away from their attack formations. Some fled the system entirely, their crews finally free to make their own choices. Others turned their weapons on the Syndicate command ships, rebellion spreading like wildfire through the fleet. The Dreadnought's captain, a scarred man named Voss, whom Marcus recognized from wanted posters, appeared on their communication screen. His face was twisted with rage and desperation. "You think your parlor tricks frighten us, alien witch?" he snarled. "We'll glass that station and everyone on it before we let you escape again." Zara smiled, and in that expression Marcus saw both infinite compassion and absolute resolve. "No," she said simply. "You won't." She reached out with her power, and the Dreadnought's massive engines simply stopped working. It's not damaged, not destroyed, just stopped, as if every component had decided to take a peaceful rest. The ship began to drift, its weapons powering, down as Zara's influence spread through its systems. "It ends now," Zara declared. "Any ship that fires on civilians will find its crew healed of their conditioning and free to choose a different path. Any ship that continues to serve the Syndicate's evil will find its systems refusing to obey. The galaxy has seen enough suffering." Remaining Syndicate vessels, seeing their flagship powerless and their fighters in full retreat, made the only logical choice. They fled into hyperspace, carrying word of what had happened here to every corner of known space. In the sudden silence that followed, Marcus stared at the woman he loved in awe. She had ended a battle without killing a single enemy, had freed enslaved minds with nothing but her will and her compassion. This was the power she had been afraid would change her, but it had only made her more herself. "The mining station is safe," he said softly. "The civilians are safe. You did it." Zara swayed on her feet, the effort of what she had done finally taking its toll. Marcus caught her as she fell, cradling her against his chest. Her skin was still warm with residual power, but her eyes were purely human in their exhaustion and relief. "Did I do the right thing?" she asked weakly. "Those soldiers, I freed their minds, but some of them had been conditioned since childhood. They don't know how to be anything but weapons." "You gave them a choice," Marcus replied, stroking her silver hair. "For the first time in their lives, they can choose who they want to be. That's the greatest gift anyone can give." Over the following months, their stories spread across the galaxy. The woman who had ended battles with healing instead of violence, who had freed slaves with compassion instead of conquest. Some called her a saint, others a dangerous revolutionary. But to Marcus, she was simply Zara, the love of his life. They settled on a small world at the edge of civilized space, where former Syndicate soldiers and freed slaves came seeking the peace Zara offered. She helped them heal from their trauma while Marcus organized them into a community dedicated to protecting those who couldn't protect themselves. Years later, as they stood together watching the sunset paint their adopted world in shades of gold, and Amber Marcus marveled at the journey that had brought them here. From a chance encounter in a derelict ship to building a new kind of family among the stars, it had been a path neither could have imagined. "Any regrets?" he asked, slipping his arm around Zara's waist. She leaned into his embrace, her skin glowing softly in the fading light. Around them, the laughter of children, human, alien, and hybrid, filled the air as their community celebrated another day of freedom. "Only one," she said with a smile, "that we didn't find each other sooner." Marcus kissed her temple, tasting the salt of happy tears. "We found each other when we needed to. That's what matters." As the first stars appeared in the darkening sky, they stood together in comfortable silence, knowing that whatever challenges tomorrow might bring, they would face them as they had faced everything else together, with love as their strength and compassion as their weapon. Their story had become legend, but their love story was just beginning.